Hey howdy hey, how is everybody doing and welcome back to Disney Daily. At the end of the movie Encanto, we see the casita collapse and all of the Madrigals have lost their magical abilities. Mirabel does manage to save the candle, but the light goes out and all the hope Mirabel has held onto is gone. She runs away because she feels as though she has done this to her home and her family and cries next to the very same river where her Abuelo Pedro was killed many years before. Just when Mirabel thinks she is all alone, her abuela Alma comes to comfort her. Abuela opens up to Mirabel about her life, but more specifically Pedro. The whole timeline of Alma and Pedro's relationship is shown to us during the song Dos Oruguitas. From the moment they first see each other, to their marriage, to the birth of their triplets, Julieta, Pepa, and Bruno, to the loss of Pedro after their village is invaded. We get to see their love story from beginning to end unfold. After the song, Abuela admits to Mirabel that it is because of her that the family and casita are broken. Mirabel assures her it isn't her fault and instead reminds her that if it wasn't for her, the family would have never had a miracle in the first place. They return to the casita and begin to rebuild their lives. And Mirabel is finally given a door and her very own doorknob with the letter M engraved on it. This ending was magical, heartfelt, and incredibly emotional. In all honesty, checked all the boxes in terms of a grand finale. But what if I told you this wasn't the original ending intended for the film? Well, let's take a closer look at Encanto's original ending that we never got to see. In this alternative end scene, a lot of the story remains the same up until the point where the casita collapses and Mirabel saves the candle. But instead of running away to the river where Pedro sacrificed himself to save his family, Mirabel runs to the city where Alma and Pedro met and were forced to flee from. Once Mirabel is in the town, she sees a bunch of people gathered around a giant mural in the middle of the city. As Mirabel gets closer to the mural, she sees that it is dedicated to her abuelo Pedro, and it says, "To love at all is to love entirely," which was a saying that Pedro would use frequently in his life. It looks like from the deleted scene, after Mirabel looks at the mural, she finds a nearby bench and begins to cry, much like she did by the river. Mirabel is consumed with guilt. She feels that she is the reason for the casita breaking and her family's powers disappearing. But just like in the final edit, Abuela Alma is the Madrigal who goes out to find young Mirabel and bring her home. When Abuela gets to the city and finds Mirabel, she joins her on the bench and the two begin to talk. Abuela does apologize, but this apology is different from the final version of the film. In this deleted scene, Abuela tells Mirabel none of this is her fault. And she says, quote, "I chose to leave this city, and because of that choice, my husband died. After I lost him, I was so afraid I couldn't bear the thought of losing anyone else." She goes on to say, quote, "I thought that if our family was strong enough, if we worked hard enough, I could keep you safe, and I realize now that my husband would be so disappointed because of all the people he would have wished to understand his words. It was me, and I am so sorry." Mirabel reaches out and grabs her hand, and the scene ends there. There is no indication if Dos Oruguitas would have been inserted into the scene somewhere, but I think it is highly likely. I have to be honest with you all, after reading about this alternative ending, I actually preferred this one, and let me tell you why. I personally love that Abuela heads back to the place where everything started for her, where she was once truly happy and had everything she could have ever wanted. I also love that they paid tribute to Pedro and his sacrifice more in this alternative ending. As much as I love Encanto, I always kind of felt like they could have talked about Pedro more or showed more of his life. So for me, this mural dedicated to him would have made this movie even more perfect. I also think this mural dedicated to Pedro would have allowed Mirabel to feel a little closer and connected to her abuelo, since she never got to meet him. I know for me personally, coming across old pictures of the grandparents I never met instantly makes me feel more close to them. And I think a lot of audience members could have related to what Mirabel would have been feeling looking at the mural in that scene. Well, that concludes this episode for today. I hope you learned something new. Please tell me in the comments which ending you prefer and why. As always, thanks for being my guest here at Disney Daily. Until next time.